Couldn't help myself, guys. I had so much things on my mind these last couple of days. I've been slacking a little bit on these YouTube videos. So I'm like, you know what? We'll give you guys two videos in one night. So I appreciate you guys and anybody that's watching. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. And for those of you that don't know me or you're watching my videos for the first time, much appreciated. My name is Mark. I'm a Denver native, huge Broncos, Nuggets, Abs fan, anything Denver related fan, but obviously just a huge sports fan in general. And I created this channel because I just wanted an outlet to where I can speak about things, all sports that I kind of cook up in my mind all day, or I'm writing on Twitter. It's a nice place to be able to form a community and form a following, and hopefully get some people involved. So looking forward to having one of my first videos with a random person I never met before in my life who reached out to me. We're gonna be doing a joint video where we just have some topics of discussion and we talk about it. And that's really what I want. I want to be able to involve the community. So appreciate you guys riding with me, man. And hopefully you're enjoying some of the content comment and not just like comment and subscribe. I always love your comments and I will do a lot. I love to respond and I'll do better even getting back to people quicker. But any kind of feedback, constructive, you can talk shit, you can say nice things, you can just say try this or try that. I don't care. I don't get offended. By all means, man. Really appreciate that. That would be cool. So one thing I was thinking about earlier today, right? And I think I've thought about this a million times, is where exactly did the fall off happen for the Broncos after Super Bowl 50? I mean, because there's about 50 things that you can actually point to as like a reason. But what do you guys think was the biggest reasoning or like thing that happened, event that happened that like that's the downward spiral, right? That's kind of what I was thinking a lot about. And I think for me, so I guess let's give a recap first, and then I'll kind of tell you guys what I think. So Peyton Manning retires, right? Which they shouldn't have let him do. They should have just let him get healthy and come back for one last season. But Peyton Manning gets retires, and I think the first thing is they just kind of let Brock Osweiler walk, right? I think that John Elway was just on his high horse. He felt like he couldn't miss. He put an offer to Brock Osweiler. He's like, "Oh, you don't appreciate us? F you," right? And I'm sure Brock Osweiler probably regrets a lot of that too. But I think by having him, even though he ultimately ended up not having a really good career at all, he got paid great, so that was good. I think he would have been really, really good fit here. I kind of compare it to like Brister and John Elway's situation, right? Where I think if Bubby Brister came back or he came and he started instead of Brian Greasy, which we ultimately went with in 1999, I think that um, that we would have had a chance to compete again. Same kind of thing with Brock. He's the guy. He's the guy that we won Super Bowl 50 because of Peyton, but the reason that we got there and we were able to get the home field advantage and the number one seed, a lot of that has to do with Brock Osweiler, man, and he played well here. And I really feel like Gary Kubiak actually liked him. I think there was a lot of positivity. So there's that. And then Gary Kubiak ends up leaving, right? And then you end up hiring Vance Joseph, rookie head coach, and then you pair him up with you try to get a bunch of well, actually, sorry, before that, then we end up drafting Paxton Lynch, okay, and then Gary Kubiak retires, and then we end up hiring Vance Joseph. That was kind of a train wreck, right? Because I mean, it's crazy to think John Elway wanted Vance Joseph instead of Wade Phillips, but they avoided that from happening. So they kind of saved their ass, right? And then you end up getting Vance Joseph, and then after Vance Joseph, so I'm just doing this off the cuff. So if I forget something, I'm sure I will, because there was just so much shit, for lack of better words. It was just bad that happened. End up hiring Vance Joseph. He ends up being an absolute failure, and then we end up getting rid of Vance Joseph, and then we end up hiring Vic Fangio to go like the opposite kind of approach. We get Drew Lock, right? Which the first big mistake we did with Drew Lock, we kept trading back. We traded all the way back to the second round, and then we took Drew Lock. So it was kind of obvious we didn't really love you, Drew. We just kind of liked you a little bit. That was about it. Never liked that. But anyways, we ended up getting Drew Lock, and then him and Rich Gangrello start to have a little bit of a thing going, right? He's looking good under Rich Gangrello, and then they fire Rich Gangrello to bring in shitty ass, what's his name? Pat Shermer. Awful move. And then they end up ousting him, right? And then after that, it just becomes this roller coaster of quarterbacks. We try to put band-aids over everything. We start with Case Keenum. We go with Joe Flacco. We go with Teddy Bridgewater. End up trading for Russell Wilson, right? So all of these things kind of spiral. So and then that's on the player side, and then on the personnel side, we end up getting rid of Vic Fangio, which was never really that good of a hire either, but he wasn't as much as bad as Vance was. We end up getting rid of Vic Fangio, and then we hire Nathaniel Hackett, and that was the world's worst hire. After and then we end up getting trading the farm and giving a whole bunch of money to Russell Wilson, and all this kinds of stuff spiraled. And I think the biggest problem with it is you see the amount of turnover that we had. We didn't have an ownership group for a lot of that too, so we had so much turnover constantly from the head coach, the coordinators, to the quarterback, and then that trickles down into the teams. And it was proof that once you start to mess with the culture, you start to change things up all the time, and you don't let anybody really buy into something, bad things are going to happen. You know, bad things are going to happen, and then you're in a position where you're trying to band-aid everything. You trade the farm to get Russell Wilson, which, of course, in hindsight, it was a terrible trade, and of course, in hindsight, it might go down as one of the worst contracts in NFL history. But at the time, everybody thought it was a good trade. And how could you not, right? 99% of people that I know were like, it was a good trade at the time. So hindsight's different. But the problem with that is you gave up all that draft capital and some of those players to where now for the next 2 seasons, you have a shitty roster that you've completely ruined over the course of the last years previous. And not to mention, guys, when you have a new GM or a new head coach or new defensive coordinator and you have that constant change, you fail to draft guys that have long-term success and like longevity in the organization, because you're drafting guys that fit that particular scheme and coaching staff. And then you change it and all of a sudden those guys, they don't necessarily fit anymore, right? Or they have to learn another new offense. They have to do 3 different defenses in 3 years. Those kinds of things happen. So there's just so much that goes into this. And then they try to band-aid everything. They try to outspend everybody, right? And then so that ends up putting them in a bad financial situation. And they don't have any draft capital. And they weren't necessarily hitting on all the draft picks. Now, don't get it twisted. John Elway had like 2 or 3 drafts in a row that are historically bad, right? So he had some good drafts early in his career. He was never really that good at the drafting afterwards, and he was really, really good at free agency. And then he kind of just fell off. He overstayed his welcome a little bit as a GM, even though he's going to always be the GOAT here. But so a lot of that happened. So there was just so many different things that went on, right? But the main events, it's like you have missing out on Brock Osweiler, and then you go for Colin Kaepernick, and then you end up drafting Paxton Lynch, right? So that's kind of the ripple effect of that. And then Gary Kubiak retires, and instead of getting Kyle Shanahan, you end up hiring Vance Joseph, right? So that's another thing that could have taken the franchise in a completely different direction, looking in hindsight. And then after Vance Joseph leaves, you end up getting after Vance Joseph leaves, you end up getting Vic Fangio, and then you're just doing this carousel at that point of quarterbacks, right? Because you don't want to have these guys, these coaches, deal with developing a quarterback. They were really hesitant to develop players in general, let alone a quarterback, right? Vance Joseph, Vic Fangio was like in his 60s when he got hired. He don't want to come in and have to deal with the growing pains of a rookie quarterback. So they try to do band-aids with all these average to below average NFL vets. And then Nathaniel Hackett was obviously a train wreck, and then you end up getting Russ, and that sets you back even more, a few more years. So there's so much that goes into it. It was so bad. It was so frustrating. But I'm curious what you guys think. What was the number one biggest mistake? Like if that one decision was made differently, it would have changed the trajectory of the franchise, right? If you ask me, my personal thing of all of these, I think the hiring of Vance Joseph over Kyle Shanahan, and the fact that I'm glad I forgot his name. The guy that was like the head of the trust before we actually got the ownership group. His name is escaping me, and it's probably because I wanted it to, because I couldn't stand him. That guy's made so many bad decisions for this team. Like I would be cussing so much more if I wasn't trying to at least hold myself back. But him vetoing Kyle Shanahan becoming the head coach because he was worried about his dad Mike being in the building is such a stupid reason. I think that single-handedly set us back. That was of all the decisions the worst decision, because I think that everything else, obviously afterwards, we wouldn't have hired Fangio. We probably wouldn't have drafted Paxton Lynch or gone with Drew Lock even, and we would have been able to have a head coach that was really good at offense, just like you see it in San Francisco, that would have ended up, getting himself a GM just like he did that had the same vision. They would have ended up drafting their guy. They would have had a continuity to be able to build on, and none of that other shit would have happened. You wouldn't have worried about bringing in Bridgewater or Keenum or Flacco or drafting Drew Lock. Or if you did draft Drew Lock, you would have at least given him a legitimate opportunity to develop. It would have never been like that, and there would have been continuity up and down the board, just like you're seeing in San Fran. Now, I think Kyle Shanahan definitely has some of his downfalls. I think he's got to be able to figure out how to get over that hump. But no doubt about it, he's one of the best head coaches, right? So that single decision, the ego there that played was by far and away the worst decision that the Denver Broncos franchise has made since Super Bowl 50, and it is one of the biggest reasons why we are in the position that we are in now. And that would be mine. But I'm curious to know what you guys think. If there's something that I forgot about, please mention it. Like, comment, subscribe per usual, man. I love it. But yeah, so just a little trip down memory lane. It was tough. It took a lot out of me. Not gonna lie. Kind of got sad when I was thinking about all the terrible decisions. But hey, man, I think the arrow is finally pointing up because we are doing what we should have done 5 to 7 years ago. We are embracing the suck and we are embracing the rebuild. And we're doing it with a Kyle Shanahan level head coach with a lot more experience. Has actually won the Super Bowl, but a level head coach in a sense of his presence, his vision, the continuity, the consistency, and the culture building. Um, so I think we're finally on the right path, and excited to see who the quarterback's going to be. All right, y'all. That's a night for me, man. Appreciate you guys. Love you all. As always, mile high salute and a good old fashioned peace out.